Rani Krishna was not satisfied with the complaint she filed. She wanted to make it totally impossible for her daughter to live with her Muslim lover again. She wanted the support of the Hindu community in backing up her story that her married daughter left her Hindu husband and eloped with a married Muslim man. Rani realized that the long separation did nothing to chill her daughter's love and infatuation. The only thing that could probably help her in her cause was Jimmy's Muslim wife. All she needed to do was convince Jimmy's first wife to stay married to her husband. That way, her daughter's union would always attract the long arm of the law. Rani did not know where Jimmy lived. She didn't know his wife's name. What she did know was Jimmy's full name, which was mentioned so many times during the trial that she memorized it. A quick look into the local phone directory yielded his address. Dragging her son-in-law in tow, she headed out to meet the wife of Jamal Khan. Rahul was already briefed so that he could play his part. Rani wondered aloud how much of a bribe would it take for the woman to stay married to her wayward husband. Rahul liked the idea and was already preparing to leave. Mrs. Khan was a simple woman and housewife. She had 2 sons with her husband and 1 son born to her before she married Jamal Khan. Although her husband cheated on her with a girl who was 20 years younger than him, she still remained loyal. She knew about his relationship with Pooja before the case reached trial. As a Muslim woman, her religious leaders convinced her that it was her husband's religious right, which sanctioned multiple wives. Her husband promised her that he would continue to love her and treat her equally along with his second wife. Mrs. Khan knew that divorcing her husband was a road she was not willing to take. Losing her husband might mean living life alone. At 40 plus, an old woman by Indian Muslim reckoning, it would be almost impossible for her to find another man. So, she accepted her kismet, fate or destiny in Arabic, Turkish, and Urdu, in life and agreed to share her husband with his second wife. Her husband kept his promise and did not abandon her. He spent the days with his new wife and the nights with her. Sadly, he rarely had sex with her from that point on. When Jamal Khan was arrested by the police, and detained, Mrs. Khan was ecstatic. She thanked her Allah 1,000 times for separating her husband from his second wife. She visited him in prison weekly for months without fail, hoping to mend the chasm between them. She would also bring along their children so that they could bond. In the months of his incarceration, Jamal began to appreciate and love his first wife all over again. Mr. Khan told his wife repeatedly that he was no longer interested in being with his second wife. When only a couple of weeks remained before Mr. Khan was to be released from jail, Mrs. Khan decided to celebrate her husband's release with a big feast and invite every Indian Muslim she knew. The unexpected visit of Rani Krishna and Rahul Patel would be a catalyst to many changes in Mr. Khan's marriage. Before their visit, Mrs. Khan and Pooja Patel had never met. They knew of each other, but that was the extent of their acquaintance. When Mrs. Khan talked to Rani Krishna, their meeting set a chain of events neither one of them could have foretold. Mrs. Khan was none other than the mother of the slum girl. Mrs. Khan was Rehana Khan, the long-suffering mother who took her daughter, Ifat Khan, to Saudi Arabia many years ago and had never seen her since. Rani did not stumble on this fact by accident. There was an uncanny resemblance when she laid her eyes upon Mrs. Khan. Something just didn't seem right. The age lines could not hide the fact that she was almost virtually identical to her adopted daughter. Without thinking, she asked Rehana if she used to have a daughter by the name of Ifat Khan. Rehana had not heard anyone utter the name of her firstborn since the day the American CIA agent mentioned it after her trial. Since that day, she would feel a world of guilt whenever she remembered her daughter. She blamed herself for not protecting her small child, and when she was released from jail, she hated herself for her inability to free her daughter from the clutches of her kidnapper and rapist. It was a dark and sad chapter in her life, which she rarely talked about, even to those close to her. Rani's visit opened that chapter back up again, and all her pent-up emotions from the past rushed forward. Rehana Khan knew that she had robbed her daughter of her childhood by taking her to a place where she was made to suffer for so long all by herself. After all these years, her daughter was still in abject sorrow. As a mother, she decided that she was now in a position to do something for her daughter. She told Rani and Rahul that she felt ashamed calling herself its mother. She told them of her decision to do the only motherly thing she could for her daughter. She would ensure her daughter's happiness by allowing her to be with her lover. She was willing and ready to sacrifice her husband for the sake of allowing her daughter a shot at happiness. She begged Rani and Rahul not to tell her daughter that the three of them had met. She preferred for Ifat to assume that her biological mother had simply vanished into oblivion. She did not want to appear in her daughter's life again after all those years and snatch the only happiness her daughter had known, and be the one causing her continued misery and pain. She also begged them not to let her husband know that he had fallen in love with his stepdaughter. None of what Rehana Khan had said seemed to move her two unexpected guests. No amount of cajoling, begging, and pleading could get them to remain silent and allow Ifat to follow her heart. Rani and Rahul refused to budge. Mrs. Khan had inadvertently given them the leverage they needed to push ahead with their plans. Rani Krishna now had more ammunition than she had expected. She had come ready to bribe, grovel, and beg Rehana to intervene and help her separate the two and stop her husband from pursuing her married daughter. Her request was that she not divorce her husband so that her daughter would not go back to him. She argued that by allowing her husband to have an affair with a married girl, he would be living in disgrace and breaking a social tenet. Rani reminded Rehana that she had her children to think about. How were her children going to react to the news that their father was still involved with a girl young enough to be his daughter, and was in fact, his stepdaughter? Mrs. Khan had just given Rani and Rahul a major advantage. She handed them the weapon they needed to kill her daughter's happiness. Rani and Rahul were very clear about American laws regarding incest. A sexual relationship between a stepfather and stepdaughter was simply not tolerated. When Mr. Khan was made aware of his relationship to his stepdaughter, he would surely have to put a stop to his relationship with her. And if he didn't, there would be a great price to pay the moment the justice system swung into action. Their problem apparently solved itself at this point, and Rani and Rahul decided to make the police station their very next stop. This new information was going to separate the two lovers forever. In the time that Rani and Rahul took to meet Rehana Khan, even before they had a chance to present the new information to the police, the authorities had already located Pooja Patel. She was found holed up in the very same hotel that she had spent on her honeymoon with her Muslim husband. The police detained her for questioning. It didn't take them long to realize that she had not been kidnapped. She readily admitted running away from her mansion. The police decided to question her further, and Pooja decided to tell all. She told the investigating officer why she had forsaken her husband and abandoned her mother. She narrated Rani's deception in saying she wanted to help her find her biological mother in India. Between sobs, she told them of how her mother forcibly took away her child and gave her up for adoption to a Christian orphanage. She also explained how she was forced to marry her own cousin and pay him a huge dowry. Dowry of this kind in American law is considered theft. Once she completed her sad tale, the investigating officer decided that crimes had been committed against Pooja and an arrest warrant was issued against Rani Krishna and Rahul Patel. The duo was arrested the very same day. Rahul was charged with kidnapping, rape, unlawful detention, extortion and theft. Rani, on the other hand, was charged as being an accessory to the crime and for aiding and abetting the same. Of all the charges, the police took very serious the allegations concerning the kidnap of an American citizen forcibly depriving the nursing infant of its mother and an overseas adoption process without consent of either the mother or the American father. Mrs. Khan, meanwhile, distraught with the unfolding events, decided to write a letter to her husband in jail. In her letter, Mrs. Khan announced that their relationship was over and she was going to file for a divorce. She would not give any reason for her decision but reassured him that his child visitation rights would not be contested. In fact, she suggested unlimited and unsupervised visitation rights. She underlined the fact that she would no longer accept him as her husband and his conjugal benefits would cease. Mr. Khan was shocked when his wife ended her letter by encouraging him to go back to his second wife and live with her as husband and wife. She added that his second wife still loved him and was eagerly awaiting his release. Mr. Khan instinctively knew that something had happened in his absence and decided that he would not forsake his first wife. He figured that his second wife had approached his first wife and claimed to still love him and probably told her that she was not going to give him up. He also suspected that she probably had threatened her. Knowing her penchant for tantrums, she probably warned his first wife to stay out of her way at the risk of bodily harm or death. In his situation, not knowing all the facts, Mr. Khan determined that it would be best to have nothing to do with his second wife. If she refused to abide by his decision, he would let the law handle it. From that point on, Mr. Khan's love for Amrita Khan grew colder for every day he spent behind bars. He lost respect for her because since his time in prison, she had not visited him or allowed him to see his baby girl. There was absolutely no contact. He concluded that her love was merely infatuation and the passion and sex were just fleeting moments shared, and could not stand the test of time. After many months of neglect and the benefit of hindsight, he regretted ever cheating on his first wife and falling in love with a childish girl like Amrita Khan. The arrival of his first wife's letter gave him the most perplexing and confusing days of his life while behind bars. Instead of looking forward to his release, he was beside himself with worry, wondering about his wife's sudden change of heart. Her about-face made no sense at all. Why did she remain faithful to him despite his unfaithfulness? Why then did she suddenly decide to leave him? Why did she keep coming to visit him in jail, bringing home prepared food? Why did she visit and bring the children along with her? Why on earth would she leave him and encourage him to go back to a girl who was supposed to be her bitter enemy and rival? She was not answering his phone calls at home and neither did she come back to visit him in jail. Neither his first wife, nor his second wife was present in the visiting room for the rest of his imprisonment. For a long time, Mr. Khan had to live with the vivid memory of his arrest in his own home. The police stormed his second wife's home and cuffed him. He could still hear the voice of his second wife screaming and begging the police to let her husband go. It was one of the darkest and saddest days of his life. Many times, he would wake up in the middle of the night and begin to weep after having recurrent nightmares. He blamed himself for causing so much pain in the heart of his young girlfriend. He regretted asking her to marry him. He had known all along that American law did not allow polygamy, but fear of losing her led him to ignore secular law and take refuge in the loophole provided to him by his religion. If he had not married her, he would not have been arrested in such a humiliating way and he would not have caused her to suffer so much because of him. What troubled his conscience more was the future of their daughter. Mr. Khan had no idea that his daughter was treated as an unwanted bastard child. Nevertheless, on the day of his release, Uncle Jimmy found his girlfriend standing and waiting for him on the same spot he had first met her when she was released from prison. He was surprised to see her standing without her black burqa. She was dressed in a sleeveless shirt and short pants. Her black hair was reaching down to her knees. She looked slightly bigger in size than the last time he saw her. Her face was decorated with a big smile, which made her cheeks inflated and her lips sweet enough to kiss. She was hot and gorgeous. Her short pants, bare shoulders, and long exposed legs made her look the part of the sexiest girl in the whole world. Jimmy felt an irrepressible desire to make love to her. He had been celibate since his arrest and had to restrain himself from acting out his desires. What he really wanted to do was to make love to her right there on the street. Pooja's heart was likewise overwhelmed with emotion by their first meeting in a very long time. When he reached out for her and took her in his arms, and began to kiss her on her lips, she felt like a virgin being touched for the first time. She was completely under his control and followed his initiative. She would have, if he had asked, made love to him right then and there, on the street and in public. The kissing of the separated lovers lasted for more than 5 minutes. It was Jimmy who realized that they were drawing curious onlookers. He eased himself out of his lover's clasp and told her of the spectators they had attracted. Shyness swept over Pooja when she realized that her private moment had been witnessed by more than 20 people. Blushing, she stopped a taxi and shoved her lover into the back seat, making her way into the car beside him. She blurted out the hotel name and soon they were on their way. As soon as the taxi began to speed up, Pooja once again threw her arms around her lover and they resumed kissing. While racing through streets and broadways, the taxi cab seemed just like the right place for necking and petting. Pooja enjoyed his hands all over her, and he could not take his hands off of her. Happiness and excitement filled her heart, and pleasure displaced the anxiousness she had felt for so long. Pooja had never thought she would be able to see Jimmy again. Now she was enjoying him touching her everywhere, and her soul was bursting with indescribable joy. She felt like they were on their wedding night for really the first time. In her delirium, she said something to her lover that made him laugh. She said to him whatever he wanted from her she was ready to give. She told him if he wanted to take all her money, it was his. She just wanted to be with him forever. Jimmy responded that he had no interest in her money but likewise wanted to be with her forever. Pooja said to him, "I love you so much, I feel like cutting off one of my breasts and cooking it for you." In an American context, this may sound ghoulish and cannibalistic, but Jimmy knew what his beloved meant and it spoke volumes of her emotions. No one ever loved him the way Pooja did. Anyway, Pooja and Jimmy spent 3 days in the hotel. It was the same place that they celebrated their wedding and enjoyed their honeymoon. During those 3 days their love was revived and it was as if he had never left. On the menu was steamy sex, passionate lovemaking, and great orgasms, day in and day out. The lovers were making up for lost time. They fell into the old grove of sexual variety and their 3 days were filled with the 18 positions of Kama Sutra. Absence had made their hearts grow fonder and they both savored the ecstasy of lovemaking in new leaps and bounds.